In a small, dusty village where the sun burned hot and people walked fast, a girl with no home, no family, and no shoes still found a reason to smile. They called her useless. They called her cursed. But one day, when a dying man fell in the street and no one stopped to help, this girl, the one everyone forgot, became the one no one could ignore. Welcome to African Moonlight Tales, the home of real, heartfelt African folk tales brought to life. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know whenever we share a new story. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Her name was Nara. She lived under the big baobab tree near the village market, where the roots curved like the hands of an old spirit. She had no house, no bed, no shoes. A worn-out sack was her pillow, and the earth was her mattress. At night, the crickets kept her company. In the early morning, she woke with the birds, stretched her thin arms, and began another day in a world that had no place for her. Nara was 16 years old, but her eyes looked like they belonged to someone much older. The villagers said her parents died of a fever when she was still a child. No one took her in. No aunt, no uncle, no family. She had no one. Yet, she did not cry or beg. She moved through the village like a quiet wind, gentle, unnoticed, and sometimes misunderstood. People whispered when she passed. Some called her cursed. Others called her mad. She talks to herself, they said. She sleeps with dogs. She never cries. But Nara paid them no mind. She had found peace in the small things others ignored. She swept the floor of the herbalist shop for a few crushed leaves. She helped an old woman carry a heavy basket and got half a roasted plantain in return. She chewed slowly, savoring every bite, and always broke off a piece to share with the dogs that followed her around. One dog had only one ear. Nara named him Dodo. He was small and fast, with a scar across his back and eyes that held a story no one knew. Dodo never left her side. He curled beside her every night under the tree, his tail brushing her arm as they both drifted to sleep beneath the stars. The market was always loud. Women shouted prices. Children laughed and cried. Drums played in the distance, and smoke from roasting yams filled the air. Nara watched it all from her corner. She never asked for food. She never reached into anyone's hand. But sometimes, someone would drop a small mango near her feet, or a kind trader would whisper, "Take this quickly before my husband sees." One day, a woman's clay pot fell and broke in the middle of the road. People cursed. Others laughed. No one stopped. Nara walked quietly, picked up the biggest piece, and carried it to the stream. She washed it gently and brought it back to the baobab tree. That broken piece became her cup, her bowl, her mirror. She stared into the muddy reflection one evening and smiled. "My life is like this pot," she whispered, cracked, but still holding something. The rainy season came. One night, thunder rolled like angry spirits. The sky flashed with white fire. The wind howled, tearing through the village like a beast. Nara held Dodo close, covering his little head with her hand. Rain soaked her wrapper. The ground turned to cold mud. Still, she did not run for shelter. She knew the doors would not open. Once, when she had fever and knocked on a house, the woman inside shouted, "Go die somewhere else." So Nara stayed under the tree and waited for the storm to pass. In the morning, her fingers were wrinkled from the cold. Her bones ached, but she smiled when Dodo licked her hand. She walked to the stream, washed her face, and watched the water move. Girls with beads in their hair and sandals on their feet laughed and pointed at her. Nara didn't respond. She dipped her broken pot in the stream and drank. One evening, while roasting a yam she had found half burned by the roadside, she heard something. A whisper. She looked around. No one. Just the wind brushing the leaves and Dodo snoring. The whisper came again. It was soft like breath. "You are poor in things," it said, "but rich in spirit. Keep your heart soft." Nara closed her eyes and listened. She didn't know if it was a spirit, her thoughts, or the tree itself. But the words stayed with her. On the 5th market day, something strange happened. The sun was high, and the village was full of life. Women sold pepper and crayfish. Children chased each other through baskets of oranges. The blacksmith shouted from his stall, and goats bleated near the well. Then there was a sound. A thud. heavy and sudden. People turned. A man had collapsed at the edge of the village road. He looked like a traveler. His clothes were dusty, his skin pale, his lips dry, his feet bare and bleeding. The crowd gathered, but no one moved close. "Who is he?" someone asked. "Is he drunk?" said another. "Maybe he carries a curse," an elder muttered. "Leave him," the herbalist's assistant said. "We don't know his story." Even the chief's guards passed by without a glance. Nara had just finished sweeping in front of the herbalist's shop. She heard the noise, looked up, and saw the man. He was lying face down. His chest moved weakly. His arms twitched. Something inside Nara stirred. She didn't know what it was. She had seen many people fall before. Old women, hungry children, drunk men. But something about this man made her heart beat faster. She stepped forward. People stared. A few hissed. One woman said, "Ah, that mad girl again." Nara didn't care. She walked past them, past the whispers and the fear. She knelt beside the man and turned him gently. His face was covered in sweat. His eyes were closed. His breath came in small, broken puffs. She touched his forehead. It was burning hot. She reached for her broken pot. She had filled it earlier with water from a stream. She poured a little on his lips. He coughed. The crowd gasped. But Nara did not stop. She tore a piece of her wrapper and wiped his forehead. She folded the rest and placed it under his head. Dodo stood beside her, tail stiff, watching everyone carefully. The man groaned. Nara looked up at the sky. The sun was too hot, the dust too thick. She needed to move him. She dragged him slowly, gently, to the shade of the baobab tree. The journey was hard. He was heavy. Her arms ached, but she did not give up. When they finally reached the tree, she placed his head on her sack and covered his body with the other half of her wrapper. She sat beside him, fanning him slowly with her hand. The crowd had dispersed. The market was alive again. The man lay still. Nara looked at him. She did not know his name. She did not know his story. She did not know if he would live or die. But she stayed. And as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Nara whispered, "Please, let him live." Dodo curled beside her once more, and night slowly covered the village. The wind was soft that morning, brushing through the grass like a whisper. Nara had barely slept. Her back ached from lying on the hard ground, but she didn't move from her spot beneath the baobab tree. The man still lay beside her, covered in her wrapper, his breathing shallow but steady. She had kept watch all night, waking every time he shifted or moaned. The stars had faded now, and the village was beginning to stir. Chickens clucked, traders arranged their goods, and the smell of burning firewood filled the air. Nara looked at the man again. His face was calm now, not twisted in pain like before. She reached out and touched his forehead. The heat was still there, but not as strong as the day before. His lips were dry, cracked. She poured a few more drops of water from her broken pot and touched them gently to his mouth. He didn't open his eyes, but he swallowed. The herbalist passed by with her walking stick and stopped. Her eyes rested on Nara and the man under the tree. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she asked, "Did you bring him here?" Nara nodded. The woman stared at the man's face, frowning. "He needs herbs. Fever is biting his bones." She reached into her basket, pulled out a small pouch, and dropped it at Nara's feet. "Boil this with water. Give him 3 sips. Only 3. Before Nara could thank her, the old woman had walked away. Nara built a small fire with the sticks she kept hidden under the roots. She filled a calabash with water from the stream and added the herbs. The mixture smelled bitter, like burnt leaves. When it was cool enough, she used a carved spoon to feed the man. The first sip he swallowed with a soft cough. The second made his eyes flutter. The third he almost refused, but Nara coaxed him with a quiet voice. The village children watched from a distance. Some threw pebbles at Dodo, who barked and chased them away. Others whispered, "Why is she feeding a stranger? He's probably mad like her." But Nara didn't hear them. Her mind was focused on the stranger whose life now lay in her hands. By the 3rd day, the man opened his eyes. They were deep brown and full of confusion. He blinked slowly, stared at the tree branches above him, then turned his head to see Nara sitting nearby, gently braiding a small piece of string. Her fingers froze when she noticed him watching. She put down the string and moved closer. "You are awake," she said softly. He didn't reply at first. His eyes moved across her face, then down to Dodo, who sat by her feet. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough and low. "Where am I?" "You're safe. Under the baobab tree. In Edom village." He tried to sit up, but his body trembled. Nara placed a hand on his chest. "Not yet," she said. "Your fever was strong." He looked down at the wrapper covering him, then at the broken pot of water beside him. His lips parted, and for a long time he said nothing. Then he whispered, "Help me." Nara nodded. No one else did. The man stared into the distance. His fingers curled weakly into the edge of the wrapper. "How long?" "3 days," she said. "You collapsed near the market. People were afraid. But I couldn't leave you there." His eyes glistened with something like tears. He turned his head away and stared at the sky. Nara didn't speak. She simply poured more water and held it to his lips. He drank slowly. That evening, as the sun turned orange and low, the man spoke again. "What is your name?" "Nara." "Nara," he repeated, tasting the name like it meant something. "Thank you." He didn't speak much after that. He rested, drifting in and out of sleep. When the fever came back at night, Nara soaked a cloth in cool water and pressed it to his forehead. She chewed dried leaves to stay awake. She sang quietly, not real songs, just sounds to keep herself from worrying. The villagers still watched. Some began to whisper more. "She's feeding him with her own hands. Maybe she's trying to charm him. He must be dangerous." But Nara ignored them. On the 5th day, he sat up fully. He leaned against the tree, his face thin but stronger. His hair was matted with dust, and his shirt hung loosely over his bones. He looked down at his hands like he didn't recognize them. "Do you have a name?" Nara asked. He hesitated. "Kore, Kore," she repeated. "Where are you from?" He looked away. "Far." She didn't push. He didn't offer more. But that night, while the moon was high and Dodo chased shadows, Kore began to speak. "I had a brother," he said suddenly. Nara turned to him, surprised by the sound of his voice. "He died. Bandits came to our home. They took everything. We fought. I survived. I ran." Nara listened. "I walked for days. I lost my shoes, my coins, my strength. Then I found this road. I don't remember falling." "You did," Nara said. "People watched you. No one helped." Kore was silent. He picked up a small stone and turned it in his fingers. "But you did." "I don't know why," she said. "I just did." They sat in silence for a while. The wind blew gently through the leaves. Kore looked at her, really looked like he was seeing something others missed. "You gave me water," he said, "and your blanket. You shared your fire, and your silence." "It wasn't much," Nara whispered. Kore shook his head slowly. "It was everything." From that night, he grew stronger. His voice returned. His eyes cleared. He smiled once when Dodo stole a roasted plantain and ran in circles with it. Nara smiled too, not because of the dog, but because Kore's smile was the first true thing she had seen in days. But something about him still felt strange. He never told her what village he came from. He never explained why he had nothing on him, not a single bag or cloth or coin. His clothes, though dusty, were made of fine thread. His words were careful, like someone who had once been taught to speak in courts, not markets. Nara didn't ask. She just watched, observed, waited. One night, while they shared roasted yam, Kore turned to her and asked, "What do you want, Nara?" She blinked. "What do you mean? Out of life. What do you wish for?" Nara stared into the fire. She thought of houses, doors that opened, warm soup, soft beds. She thought of not being chased, not being spat on, not being feared. "I want peace," she said quietly. "A place to rest without fear. Nothing grand. Just rest." Kore didn't answer, but his eyes stayed on her long after the fire went out. The next morning, he stood without help. He stretched, looked at the road beyond the market, then looked at her. "I need to go," he said. Nara's heart squeezed. "Where?" "I have to return. There are things I must face." Nara nodded slowly. "Will you come back?" Kore looked down at her broken pot, then at Dodo, then finally at her. He smiled. "Yes." And then, with nothing in his hands but strength in his steps, he walked away. The days after Kore left felt heavier than before. The baobab tree still stood tall, and the market still buzzed with noise, but to Nara, everything felt a little quieter, like something important had gone missing. She sat under the same spot where Kore had laid, staring at the path he had taken, hoping to see him return. Dodo rested his head on her lap as if he, too, was waiting. She told herself not to think too much, but her heart didn't listen. Every time someone passed in fine clothes or dusty sandals, she looked up, but it was never him. The villagers, having seen Kore leave on his own 2 feet, stopped talking. The whispers died. To them, it was over. To Nara, something had only just begun. One night, when the sky was painted with stars and the moon hung low like a watchful, Nara sat tracing circles in the sand with a stick. Dodo lay beside her, breathing slow. The fire had gone out. The world was quiet. That was when she felt it again, the whisper, the one she had heard before, during the storm, soft like breath against her ear. But this time it spoke clearer. Your kindness has opened a door, child, but not all who enter carry the truth. Nara froze. Her eyes darted around, but there was no one. Just the rustle of the leaves and the night wind brushing her cheek. She sat still, her heart beating faster. The whisper came again, this time from behind her. Not all gifts come with open hands, and not all names speak the truth. She stood quickly and turned. In the darkness, just past the tree roots, stood a woman, no taller than Nara, her skin dark like coal, wrapped in a faded cloth that shimmered like wet leaves. Her hair was braided with shells, and her feet were bare, yet she made no sound as she moved. Nara stepped back, unsure whether to run or speak. The woman raised a hand, calm and slow. Do not fear me. I am not of this world the way you are. Nara's voice came out like a whisper. Are you a spirit? The woman's eyes sparkled like firelight. Some call me that. Others call me the Watcher. I pass through stories like wind through grass. I come when something sacred is about to change. Nara's mouth felt dry. She took another step back. You gave everything, the spirit said. Without promise, without knowing. That kind of gift is rare. Nara swallowed. I just didn't want him to die. Even so, the spirit answered, many people see a dying man and walk away. But you, girl of the dust, child of silence, you stayed. She stepped closer, her feet leaving no prints on the ground. Do you know who he was? I know his name. Kore. The spirit smiled faintly, shaking her head. That is not the name the wind carries. His name is longer, older, wrapped in gold and secrets. He left you with little, but he carries much. Nara's eyes narrowed. Why are you telling me this? Because your path is about to be tested, and your heart will be asked to choose. Choose what? Forgiveness, the spirit said, and truth. But before the end, you will be offered a lie that smells like honey. You must not taste it. Nara stared at the woman, unsure if she was dreaming. The spirit reached in her wrap and pulled out something small. It looked like a folded piece of bark tied with red string. When the moment comes, she said, burn this. It will show you what eyes cannot see. Nara hesitated, then reached out and took it. The bark felt warm in her hand, pulsing like a heartbeat. But how will I know when? She stopped. The woman was gone. No footsteps, no wind, just silence. Even Dodo had not stirred. Nara looked at the bark again and tucked it deep inside the folds of her sack. She looked up at the stars, then back at the road. Something inside her shifted. The air felt different now, heavy with something unseen. 2 more days passed. Then came the horse. It galloped into the village at dawn, hooves pounding against the earth, dust rising behind it like smoke. The rider wore a red cloth across his shoulders, and his voice echoed through the square. Gather, gather. The chief calls for all. There is news from the capital. Villagers poured into the square, curious and buzzing with excitement. Nara stood at the edge of the crowd, unseen as usual, holding Dodo in her arms. The rider pulled a scroll from his pouch and read aloud. The son of Chief Bako, thought lost these 5 years, has returned to the city alive. Gasps filled the air. He was taken by bandits on the journey to marry the princess of Zui. But he survived. He returns now with a message for the people. He speaks of a girl, a girl who saved him when no one else would. He speaks of her often, a girl with nothing. Nara's heart stopped. The rider rolled the scroll and placed it back in his pouch. His name is not Kore. His name is Kororima, son of Bako, heir to the mountain city of Araku. He sends gifts, and he sent his promise. He will return soon to find the girl who gave him everything. The crowd erupted. A chief's son. She saved a prince. She'll be queen. She'll wear gold. Women clapped. Men cheered. Children shouted and danced in the dust. And for the first time in her life, heads turned toward Nara. A few people pointed. One woman grabbed her hand. "It's you, isn't it?" Nara didn't answer. Her chest felt tight. The man she had fed with her last crumb. The man she had sat beside through fever and silence. A prince? A girl pushed through the crowd, holding a small clay bowl. "You helped him. Take this. It's soup." Another offered a shawl. Another gave her bread. The chief's assistant called her to the center. "Prepare her," he shouted. "When the prince returns, she must look like royalty." They led her away. Dodo followed, confused. Her feet, always bare, now touched soft cloth. People bowed. People smiled. The same mouse that once spat near her feet now spoke her name like a song. But Nara said nothing. In her sack, the bark given by the spirit stayed, wrapped in its red string, growing warm once again. That night, under a new roof and clean clothes, Nara sat by herself. The hut was full of soft things, pillows, blankets, lamps. But she could not sleep. Korima, prince, lies that smelled like honey. She touched the pouch holding the bark. Something was coming, and her heart was not ready. The day he returned, the sky was heavy with clouds, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. The village had been swept clean. Red cloth hung from doorways. Women wore their best wrappers. Drummers beat slow rhythms near the square, their hands steady but expectant. Men stood straighter than usual. Children were told not to run or shout. Everyone was waiting. Nara stood by the edge of the gathering. Her hair had been braided with beads, her wrapper freshly washed. Around her neck, a borrowed necklace sat awkwardly, unfamiliar to her skin. People greeted her differently now. They called her the girl who saved a prince, or the one with the golden heart. They offered smiles, kind words, even blessings. But Nara's heart was restless. She had not seen him since the day he walked away. She had not spoken his real name. And though the village called it a celebration, her chest carried a quiet storm. The pouch with the bark was tied around her waist, hidden beneath the folds of her cloth. She hadn't opened it. Not yet. Not until she had to. The sound of hooves broke the silence. Four riders entered the village gate, their horses tall and strong. Behind them came a black carriage trimmed with gold. The drums grew louder. People shouted and danced. Some threw petals into the air. The carriage stopped. A guard stepped down and opened the door. And then he stepped out. He wore white robes trimmed in blue. His hair was neatly tied. Around his neck hung a gold medallion shaped like a lion. He looked strong, clean, and calm. But his eyes were the same ones Nara had seen burning with fever beneath the baobab tree. He smiled at the crowd. He raised a hand in greeting. The people clapped and cheered. Then his eyes found her. For a moment, the noise faded. His smile faded too, just slightly, replaced by something deeper. He walked toward her, slowly, as if measuring every step. When he reached her, he bowed his head. "Do you remember me?" he asked. "I never forgot," Nara said. He took her hand. "You saved me when I was nothing." "You were never nothing," she said. "Just hidden." The crowd gathered around them. Someone shouted, "Tell us, Prince, is she the one?" Korima turned to face them. "Yes," he said, loud and clear. "She is the one. This girl, Nara, gave me water when my lips were dry. She gave me her food, her fire, and her care. While others turned away, she knelt beside me. I owe her my life." The crowd roared with joy. People danced. Women wept. Drummers beat louder. Korima raised his hand again. "In my land," he said, "a debt of the heart is paid with the heart. I have come not only to thank her, but to honor her. I ask that she come with me. I ask that she take her place beside me. Not as a servant, not as a reward, but as a queen." Gasps echoed through the square. The villagers shouted her name, repeating it like a song. Nara stood still. She looked at him. His face was sincere. His words were warm. But something pulled at her heart. That night, she was taken to a house near the chief's compound. They gave her food, new clothes, and soft mats. They spoke of plans, of travel, of gowns and gifts and gold. Everyone wanted to touch her, speak to her, smile at her. She nodded through it all, her mind far away. When the house was finally quiet, she sat alone by the fire. Dodo lay beside her. The pouch was still tied at her waist. Her hands moved slowly, untying the red string. She pulled out the folded bark and placed it into the fire. The flame crackled. The smoke rose, and the air changed. In the fire's glow, shapes began to form. Shadows moved. Voices whispered. She saw the market road again, empty. She saw Korima, walking, dust covering his clothes. But then the vision shifted. She saw him standing by a river, speaking to a man in armor. She saw bags of gold hidden beneath a tree. She saw his lips moving, forming words meant only for the wind. Then came another image. Him, standing before a mirror, removing a ring from his finger, placing it in a wooden box, and saying softly, "She must never know." The fire cracked again. The vision faded. Nara sat in silence. Her heart beat loud in her ears. She didn't know what the ring meant or who the man in armor was, but something was being hidden, something he chose not to tell her. The next morning, the village gathered for the final blessing. The chief stood tall in his red and white robe. Korima stood beside him, waiting for Nara to arrive. People lined the road with flowers. Drums played low and steady. She stepped out in a plain white wrapper. No gold, no beads, just Nara. As she walked, people reached out to touch her, to smile, to say her name with pride. But her eyes were only on him. She stood before him. The chief raised his staff. "Daughter of the dust," he said, "you are now." Nara raised her hand. The drums stopped. She turned to the crowd. Her voice was quiet, but strong. "You have given me names I never asked for. Cursed, mad, now queen." The crowd murmured. She turned to Korima. "You offer me the world, but I only ever wanted peace." His face changed, confusion flickering behind his eyes. "I don't know your whole story," she said, "and maybe I never will. But I know this. Kindness is not a debt to be paid with gold. It is not a price for power." He stepped forward, reaching for her hand. "Nara." She stepped back. "You owe me nothing," she said. "Not your kingdom, not your crown. I gave you care because it was the right thing to do. I want nothing more than to live in truth, without pretending to be more than I am." The chief lowered his staff. The drummers did not play. The people stood in stunned silence. She bowed her head gently. Then she turned and walked away, Dodo following close behind, the dust rising behind her bare feet. And though she walked alone, she had never felt lighter. The sun was rising slow and gold across the hills when Nara reached the baobab tree. The morning breeze danced through the leaves, brushing against her skin like a welcome. She dropped her wrapper of gifts to the ground and sat where she always had, between the roots, where the earth remembered her. Dodo curled beside her and licked her hand. The world around her had changed, but the tree remained the same, and so did she. The village behind her stayed quiet that day. People watched from a distance, but did not approach. Some whispered that she had refused a crown. Others said she had shamed a prince. But most said nothing, only stared as if unsure how to speak to someone who had turned down everything they themselves had dreamed of. Yet Nara did not feel regret. Her heart was calm, even when her hands trembled. Later that evening, while she prepared her small fire and roasted a yam someone had left at her feet without a word, a figure appeared in the distance. He walked slowly, carefully, like someone who had been carrying a heavy truth for too long. It was Korima. He stopped a few feet away from her. His fine robe was gone, replaced by simple cloth. His medallion was not on his neck. He looked smaller now, not weak but humble. Nara looked up, but said nothing. He sat on the ground, letting the dust stain his clothes. "I came to thank you again," he said. She watched the fire. The yam hissed. He picked up a small stone and rolled it between his fingers. "I should have told you the truth sooner, about who I was. about what I left behind. She glanced at him. I had gold hidden in the forest. I paid a man to watch over me in secret, just in case I collapsed. I had guards nearby when I fell. It wasn't all chance. Her face did not change. I was testing something, he said. The world. Myself. I didn't trust people anymore. I wanted to see if there was still kindness without reason. And what did you find? She asked softly. He placed the stone down. You. The fire cracked. I'm not proud of what I did, he continued. I acted like a beggar, but hid like a king. I let you give when I had more than you. I let you stay awake while I pretended to be helpless. And still you helped. She turned to him. Her eyes were tired, but not angry. You were dying, she said. I didn't care about your story then. I just cared that you breathed. He nodded slowly. I meant it, he said. When I said you were everything. She smiled faintly. But you were still a prince. He shook his head. Maybe in name, but not today. Today I'm just a man who wants to give something honest. She raised an eyebrow. He reached into his wrap and pulled out a simple wooden box. He opened it, and inside was a silver ring, plain, smooth, and without stones. He placed it between them on the ground. This is not a crown, he said. It's not a reward. It's not a promise of power. It's just a symbol. If ever, one day, you want to come find me, you can. If not, keep it, or throw it away. I will not ask again. She looked at the ring. It shone softly in the firelight. I never wanted gold, she whispered. I know. I never wanted to be queen. I know. I only wanted to matter. He looked at her, eyes soft. You already do. Silence grew between them again. The yam was ready. She tore it in half and offered him a piece. He took it without pride, without ceremony, and they ate together under the tree. When the stars returned to the sky and the fire became ash, he stood. I must go, he said. She didn't stop him. He bowed slightly, not as a prince, but as a man, and walked into the night. The next morning, the village awoke to find Nara still under the tree, same as before. She no longer swept the herbalist's shop. She no longer waited for coins or leftover food. Instead, people came to her, not to give, but to listen. Some brought stories. Some brought tears. Some brought silence. She listened to them all. The children called her Sister Nara. The elders called her the Soft One. The traders called her the Quiet Fire. She never wore gold, never entered a palace. But when people spoke of her, they lowered their voices in respect. When they sat by her tree, they felt safe. When they left, they felt lighter. Years passed, and on the day the prince's carriage returned to the village with news of a grand wedding far away, Nara was still under her tree, feeding Dodo's grandchildren and watching the sun. She never wore the ring, but she never threw it away. It stayed in a small wooden bowl beside her calabash, untouched but never forgotten. Because sometimes a girl who has nothing gives everything, and in doing so, she becomes more powerful than a queen. She becomes a story, one that the wind carries from ear to ear, from village to village, until even the stars pause to listen. And long after the fire has turned to ash, her name remains. Nara, the girl with nothing, who gave everything. Thank you for watching this powerful story. If it touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe for more emotional and inspiring African folktales.